A woman in Port-au-Prince carries the surname Beaumont. Her family has been in Haiti for 200 years. Her ancestry is West African. She does not speak French as a first language. She has never been to France. Her DNA test returns 97% African ancestry. A man in Castries, St. Lucia, carries the surname Fonteneau. His grandparents caught fish in the Caribbean Sea and spoke Antillean Creole at home. His island has been British since 1814. His DNA traces to West and Central African populations brought to the Caribbean under the French colonial plantation system. A woman in New Orleans carries the surname Tureaud. Her great-great-grandmother was enslaved on a Louisiana sugar plantation under a French-speaking colonial administration. Her DNA test returns a profile measurably different from both of theirs. With European ancestry percentages her Caribbean counterparts do not carry. But the name on her family records is still French. None of these families are French. Not one of them has French ancestry in any straightforward sense. But every one of those surnames is traceable to a specific French colonial administrative system that deposited French names into populations the French economy had enslaved, exploited, or recruited. And the names remained when the French left. So the question is not why these families have French surnames. The colonial registry answers that directly. The question is what the DNA running underneath each of those French surnames is actually recording. Because the answer is different in Haiti than in Louisiana, different in Louisiana than in St. Lucia, and different in St. Lucia than in Trinidad. Same empire, same language, same administrative mechanism. 3 completely different genomic stories underneath the same colonial label. While every other colonial naming system in the Atlantic world deposited names that at least partially corresponded to the genetic ancestry underneath them, Spanish surnames tracking to Iberian haplogroups, English surnames tracking to British haplogroups, the French colonial civil registry deposited French names onto populations whose DNA pointed everywhere except France. And it did this through 5 distinct mechanisms simultaneously, each producing a different genomic outcome that a DNA test today will return differently depending on which mechanism deposited your family's French name. Haiti forced me to ask a question I hadn't asked about any other territory. What happens to a naming record when the people whose names it borrowed are violently removed from the island? The answer is the entire Haitian surname story. Saint-Domingue, the French colony that became Haiti, was at its peak the most profitable plantation colony in Atlantic history. The French slave trade operating in the Caribbean drew predominantly from the Bight of Benin, bringing Fon, Yue, and Mina populations from the coastal region of what is now Benin, Togo, and western Nigeria. By 1789, Saint-Domingue held approximately 500,000 enslaved Africans against 30,000 French colonizers. The Haitian Revolution began in 1791. By January 1st, 1804, Haiti declared independence. The French colonial population was expelled. The multi-generational demographic mixing that deposited European genetic ancestry into Caribbean populations through generations of colonial cohabitation simply did not happen in Haiti at the scale it happened in Martinique or Guadeloupe. The revolution removed the French colonizers. The surnames they had registered stayed. The genetics they nominally referenced left on ships. A Haitian family bearing a French surname today is not carrying the name of a biological ancestor. They are carrying the name of a plantation, a colonial administrative household, or a post-independence Haitian state naming decision. The French colonial registry assigned surnames to the enslaved population based on which plantation household they were registered under. After independence, the new Haitian government issued surnames to its citizens as a civic act of national construction. Some Haitians retained French names, some were assigned new ones, some chose names that referenced the revolution itself or African origins. What the colonial administrators did not account for was what a revolution does to a naming record when it simultaneously expels the people the names were supposed to reference. The surname says France. The DNA says Benin. The Haitian genome is 97% African in ancestry. A French surname in Haiti is an administrative artifact that survived the expulsion of the population it nominally referenced. I had to look closely at the history of the Gulf Coast to realize how deceptively a name can mask the true biological ledger. In this next chapter, consecutive empires transformed the meaning of a surname in a way I simply did not see anywhere else. Louisiana was the only major French colonial territory in the Americas that passed through 3 consecutive colonial administrations: French, Spanish, then American, before producing the specific population that carries French surnames today. The French colonial period established the Louisiana Code Noir in 1724. Combined with subsequent Spanish rule, it reinforced a strict, legally recognized three-tier racial structure that separated enslaved Africans from free people of color, the gens de couleur libres, and white colonizers. While the Haitian Revolution violently erased this social stratification in the Caribbean, Louisiana's consecutive empires protected and institutionalized a specific pattern of European admixture into the free colored population across generations. Under this legal framework, the gens de couleur libres could own property and conduct business, existing as a distinct class with documented rights that the enslaved population did not hold. This persistent structure meant that generational admixture became formal, legally recognized, and systemic, rather than occurring informally as it did in other colonial territories. The genomic consequence is measurable. Louisiana Creole families bearing French surnames today show European ancestry percentages in the range of 30 to 40%, measurably higher than comparable Afro-Caribbean populations from territories that did not have the Code Noir's formalized three-tier system. The specific Y chromosome haplogroups in Louisiana Creole communities reflect this. R1b haplogroups of French and Acadian origin appear in Louisiana Creole paternal lines at frequencies that reflect documented patterns of French colonial planter relationships with enslaved and free black women that were institutionalized rather than incidental to the colonial system. A Tureaud in New Orleans and a Beaumont in Port-au-Prince both carry French surnames deposited by French colonial administrative systems. The DNA test returns 35% European ancestry for one and 3% for the other. Same linguistic origin of the name. Completely different genomic story underneath it. As I tracked these civil registries across the map, I realized the most compelling anomalies weren't on islands that stayed French, but on territories that fell under British rule generations ago. The most historically overlooked French surname populations in the Caribbean are on islands that are no longer French. St. Lucia, Dominica, Trinidad, and Grenada were all French administered during the period when the French Colonial Civil Registry established the surname, records that survive today. All four were ceded to Britain at various points between 1763 and 1814. St. Lucia was transferred between French and British control 14 times before permanently becoming British in 1814. During the French administrative periods, the Colonial Civil Registry had established French surnames in the enslaved and free colored population. When the British took permanent control, they did not order the existing surname records changed. The result? St. Lucians today predominantly bear French surnames, speak English as an official language, and maintain Antillean Creole, a French-based Creole language, as a living vernacular spoken alongside English. The island has been British for over 200 years. The names have not changed. Dominica followed the same pattern. French colonial administration, British takeover, retained French surnames, French-based Creole still spoken alongside English today. The surnames outlasted the empire that issued them because colonial administrative records, once established, functioned as legal identity documents that subsequent administrations found it impractical and legally complex to replace. Trinidad's French surname community arrived through a different mechanism entirely. In 1783, the Spanish colonial administration of Trinidad issued the Cédula de Población, an edict offering free land to Roman Catholic settlers from any nation. Large numbers of French Creole planters from Martinique, Guadeloupe, Saint Lucia, and Dominica responded, bringing their enslaved African workforce with them. These French Creole settlers established the plantation economy that would later receive Indian and Chinese indenture workers, and they deposited French surnames into the Trinidadian population through the specific 1783 migration event. Trinidad was never directly colonized by France. Its French surnames came from French colonizers who had already been displaced from other French islands and relocated to a Spanish territory. The surname Beaumont in Port-au-Prince, and the surname Tureaud in New Orleans, and the surname Fonteneau in Castries all trace their administrative origin to the French Colonial Civil Registry. That much is the same. Everything underneath it is different. In Haiti, the French surname is a revolutionary artifact, a colonial name that survived the expulsion of the colonial population whose administrative records generated it. The DNA under it traces to Fawn and Yue haplogroups from the Bight of Benin. In Louisiana, the French surname is a Code Noir document. issued within a three-tier legal racial structure that institutionalized European admixture in ways Caribbean counterparts did not produce. The DNA under it includes measurable R1b French origin haplogroups alongside West African maternal lineages. In St. Lucia, the French surname is a treaty remnant, a name that survived 14 territorial transfers and 2 centuries of British administration because the paperwork was never replaced. The DNA under it traces to the West and Central African populations the French slave trade brought to the Lesser Antilles. Same French Empire, same administrative language, same colonial civil registry mechanism. 3 different colonial systems producing 3 different genomic stories that a DNA test today will return with 3 different percentage breakdowns. There is a 4th mechanism that produces the most counterintuitive result of all. Despite the strict religious bans of the Code Noir, crypto-developing networks of Huguenot Protestants and Sephardic Jewish families quietly navigated the French Caribbean. Many adopted French surnames or nominal Catholic identities to integrate into colonial administration. In Louisiana specifically, a documented population of French surnamed families with Sephardic Jewish ancestry arrived through this exact maritime network. The French surname in those families is a French administrative adoption overlaying a completely different genetic ancestry, the same pattern as the Puerto Rican Canarian and Converso surnames covered elsewhere on this channel. The name records a colonial integration decision made under institutional pressure. The Y chromosome haplogroup records the population the family actually came from. In the Sephardic cases, those haplogroups trace to the ancient Levant, carried through Spain, through the Ottoman Mediterranean, and then through the French Caribbean before arriving in Louisiana. The surname is the colonial record. The haplogroup is the biological one. The name survived the people. It survived the plantations, the revolution, the crossing, the empire that issued it, and it made it all the way down to you. If this helped you understand what you've been carrying, send it to the person in your family who has been carrying it too. Thanks for watching.